Welcome back to the newspaper review. Now we are joined virtually with our guest this morning, Barrister Fred Nzako. Thank you for joining us on the newspaper review.
Thank you. Good morning.
Now let's talk about some of the topics we have here this morning. Let's get into the fiscal framework topic. 2022 budget deficits jumped to 7.35 trillion naira. Buhari to borrow 965 billion naira. Let me get your reaction first on this headline before we get into more of the questions for today.
It is worrisome that our budget deficit keeps jumping up, and our federal government keeps borrowing humongous amount of money from time to time from every part of the world. And the worrisome aspect of it is that we are not increasing our productivity. We have said for 15 time that nothing is wrong with borrowing. When such borrowed funds are deployed towards productive venture and not towards consumption, but largely most of the funds being borrowed by government is spent on recurrent expenses. Because you realize that our budget, percentage of our budget that goes to recurrent expenses is as high as 70%, some cases more than that. And the current expenses are expenses that really do not boost or increase productivity. So that makes it very difficult for us to be able to pay back all these loans that are being borrowed. The government will always claim and tell the people that they are borrowing for infrastructural development. But we don't see the effect on ground. We don't see the development, and we don't see the net result of that in our productive ventures and productive capital. So that is one aspect. And the other second part of it that is worrisome is that government has refused to reduce the cost of governance. And by reducing the cost of governance, it will obviously reduce the recurrent budget costs of our budget.
Okay.
And by so, much more funds will be released towards capital budget, which actually are the ones that boost the productivity. So I think the government is not getting our financial systems and financial policy, public finance management well. And that is why you see this kind of shocking news of huge budget deficits and huge borrowings.
Okay, we have a report on the Punch newspaper this morning that according to the president, there have been new developments. Now, you mentioned that we borrow for expenditure and not for productivity, but we can see that the president has mentioned spikes in market price of crude oil. We will not forget that it was aggravated by the Russian-Ukraine war, which is not something that was foreseen. It was not, nobody saw that coming. So the crude oil, the price of crude oil and the Russian-Ukraine war is now a new development that is the reason for this borrowing. So do you think that if this war continues, it is something that Nigeria can manage, especially with the prices of crude oil at the moment and how it affects the average businessman in Nigeria?
It is ironical. It is ironical and a very painful one for that matter, that what is supposed to bring benefit to Nigeria is bringing costs and the deficit to us. The war in Russia and Ukraine is supposed to, which has increased the price of crude oil, is supposed to be of immense benefits for Nigeria, but it has turned out not to be so, because Nigeria is a huge exporter of crude petroleum. So we're supposed to make a lot of petrodollar from our export on account of the increased price of crude oil. Okay. But because we are importing virtually almost 80 to 90% of our petroleum products consumption, which are the derivatives of the crude that we export. So what we gain from the right, we lose in more numbers from the left. The gain we make from the increased price of crude oil, we lose from importation of petroleum products. That is petrol, diesel, kerosene, and the rest of them. Meanwhile, these are all derivatives of the crude petroleum that we export. And just simply because our refineries are not working. So when Nigeria is paying a huge price for lack of planning, for lack of good management of our resources, and for lack of workability of our refineries. And and for lack of entrenching domestic refining in our system. How can a country of 200 million people be relying on imported petroleum products? That is the challenge that we are having. So if the government is giving excuses with the Ukrainian-Russian war, and the government is not telling Nigerians the real causes of our problems, because the causes are not simply because of that war, it's simply because of our lack of internal planning and management of our resources.
Now, let me get it straight, just for maybe someone who's watching us for the first time. Are you saying that because of the war, if we could if we can extract our crude oil and then export a finished product to other nations, would have been able to make more oil dollar, like you called it?
Yeah, you cannot extract a finished product because our refineries are not working. When the crude oil comes out from under the soil, it is crude. That's why it is called crude oil. It is never consumed or utilized in that crude nature. It passes through refining process, which is what the refinery does. And in the process, there are several derivatives that you get from that. You get diesel, you get petrol, which is the PMS, the one used to prepare your gas. You get kerosene, you get aviation fuel, which is used by the aeroplanes, and you get so many other things that are used in the petrochemical industry, including bitumen. But because you do not have functional refineries, you cannot get all these byproducts. And what Nigeria does is to export the crude, which is the natural raw material, to other countries and make money in dollars. Meanwhile, the money they make in dollars, they will now use, in fact, they will even borrow to add, to be able to import all these byproducts that I had earlier mentioned. That is the challenge of Nigeria. And Nigeria has 4 refineries, 2 in Port Harcourt, 1 in in Warri, and 1 in Kaduna. None of them is working. None is working. And we have been asking government for the past 20 years to build more refineries or give licenses to those who have the capacity to build refineries so that we'll be able to refine our products and produce what we consume and export to other countries. In the times past, we used to export when our refineries were working and we were making money both from the crude export and from the export of the petroleum products. But today, we make money only from the crude products. We make nothing from export of products. Instead, we import. And that is the major challenge that we have today, having increased in our population, and our consumption of petroleum products has increased. So we are having problems, and we must keep importing until we refine locally. The only thing government is waiting for is the private refinery that is coming up in Lagos. And the government is only waiting for that. No other effort is being made in the positive and in the right direction to increase our domestic refining capacity. It is a failure of governance, it is a failure of planning, and it is a failure of utilization of our natural resources.
Now let's get into something about governance now, away from our deficit. Let's get into the section 84 and subsection 12 matter from the Electoral Act 2020. This section seems to be causing a lot of controversy in the news lately. And maybe someone watching, is just wondering, what is the big deal about this Electoral Act? Why is it so much of a concern? And why are we seeing the National Assembly fights, and what is exactly the problem with our Electoral Act judgments in Nigeria at this point in time?
And the Electoral Act is the act made by National Assembly for the conduct of elections and all matters concerning elections and governance, selection of those who will govern the country at legislative and executive arms of government at state and federal levels. So it is a very important act.
Okay.
And when the act is made, the act controls most of the things that are done by INEC and by political parties, apart from the ones that already clearly and already stated in the Constitution. So the act is a very important piece of legislation. Now, the last Electoral Act before this current one that is causing brouhaha was in 2010. It was used for the 2011 election when it was amended, and it was used for the 2015 election, and also used for the 2019 election. Efforts are being made by National Assembly to amend that act, to bring it in line with the realities of the now, in line with the realities of the modern experiences. Now, National Assembly has succeeded in doing that, and we now have a 2022 brand new electoral act. In that act, part of the provisions of the act required that the section 84, subsection 12, which is the one that is covering the issue that you mentioned, had to do with the issue of whether or not an officer of government or a public officer should still retain his position while contesting for election or while being a delegate in a political party primaries. And the act says that any political appointee that wants to become a delegate to a political party election at the primary level must resign. If you either want to vote for or be voted or to vote for somebody else as a delegate or be voted for as a contestant, you must resign your position. You cannot hold your position and become a delegate or a contestant. That is the provision of that act in that section 84, subsection 12. And immediately after the act was passed and signed into law, government at the federal level realized that, we possibly have made a mistake or shot ourselves in the foot or possibly have not protected our interests. And Mr. President wrote National Assembly seeking that that section be removed such that those who are appointed can still act as delegates and can still run for elections without resigning their offices. And National Assembly told Mr. President that they were not going to amend it or remove that section that had already been signed. At that point, the Attorney General of the Federation went to court to go and get an order of court to expunge and remove that section that federal government felt was not protecting their interests. And the lawyers and observers of public policy and politics of Nigeria felt that it was a judgment gotten from a back door because it did not pass through all the due process. It was more or less like an expected judgment which did not go through the arguments from all parties involved. So they felt it was not a judgment gotten in good faith. And the National Assembly had now gone on appeal to appeal against that judgment and ensure that it does not stay. And I think, and both Nigerians think that National Assembly has done what is right. And we want to encourage National Assembly to guard their loins and ensure that they pursue this matter to its logical conclusion, because what the Attorney General has done does not command the respect or the acceptance of majority of Nigerians.
Okay, if I could just ask you in less than a minute, I can hear the advantage and disadvantages and those that this particular section favors, in this electoral act. But how does it favor, or what's the positive or the negative effect on the common man, on those that have to vote? Now, I can hear how it favors or not favor those in governance at this point in time, those holding political office holders, or those that are in any position of some sort. But I mean, for those that are not holding positions, for the rest of us Nigerians who probably are just going to come out and cast our vote, how does Section 84, subsection 12 affect us? What's our business with this act?
Good. Very, very good question, Esther. I will tell you why that section is causing brouhaha and why there are a lot of issues around it. It is as a result of the experiences of the past, because we will find out that those in executive powers, mostly the governors and the president, whenever it is time for primary election, they go and appoint so many aides, special advisors, special assistants, senior special assistants, and the rest. Hundreds of them. There was a particular governor that appointed about 600 aides. 600? A month. About 600, yes. Okay. A month to the conduct of primary election of his party. Such that those aides will now become delegates. Because by virtue of their position in government, they were automatic delegates. And they will only go there to do the bidding of the governor. And by so doing, it will not create a level playing field in terms of contestation. That is why the governors, this issue of this idea of power of incumbency, the governor having appointed such number of people will now determine who becomes the flag bearer of the party. And it will automatically push out other contestants.
Okay.
So those you and I, that we are not party to such delegates, and we are not party to such primaries, you will be left with the people that the parties will throw up. So even when you have a very good person running for the primaries of the party, who you know that will do well, the person will not be given the chance, except if the person is in the good books of the
So this affects proper representation. This is what it means, that those I want to represent me, or those that need to represent the common people, may not be properly represented.
It affects proper representation, because in Nigeria you cannot run for an election without being in a political party. So it is political parties that present the candidate. So whoever and whatever they present, it is from there that you make your choice. Even if they present somebody that is not fit and proper in the eye of the public will have no option than to make choices from whatever the parties have presented. So it is a manipulation that has been going on for long. And in order to cure such manipulation, the National Assembly, in its wisdom, having collected the opinions of stakeholders and the critical elements in the electoral management system, including the civil society organizations and even election observers, have now inserted that clause in Section 84, subsection 12, that if you are a political appointee holding office in government, you will not become a delegate to the primary election, and you will not run for an election. So you cannot eat your cake and have it at the same time. Either you resign or you don't become a delegate.
That makes it clearer. That makes it clearer now. That makes it clearer. Now, one last topic before we move on. This is just going to be a very short one. The NIN and SIM card linkage numbers were bad this week, and I guess someone around you, you probably tried to call someone and maybe their number was not reachable, and then you can trace it to this. Do you think this barring of numbers is the way forward? What do you think about the SIM card and NIN linkage, and then barring people from being able to make phone calls if they are not linked?
I think government is being very insensitive to the yearnings and aspirations of the people of Nigeria.
Why do you think so?
Yes, I think so, because for some time now, the NIN has been not up and doing in registration of people. Their server had broken down repeatedly, and there was a particular time for almost a month, the server didn't work. And people were running helter-skelter trying to register and trying to do one or two things with their NIN registration. And in that case, do you now blame the people for the failure of the server of NIMC, National Identity Management Commission? You don't blame the people, you blame the government that owns that commission. So I think government should release that wage that they have placed, and then further make sure that their system is working, so that they will be able to register more people. Nigerians want to be registered. This idea that Nigerians don't want to be registered is a wrong notion.
Okay.
Everybody wants to be registered because the NIN has become a major identity for everybody. It is demanded at every point. So everybody would like to be registered. But the challenge is that the registration portal, which is the server, has not been working optimally. And it's affecting the registration exercise. And that is why the percentage of registration has fallen down abysmally below 45% in the past 3 months. Not because Nigerians were not approaching the Commission for Registration, but because their facility for registration have not been working. So I think government should, Ministry of Communication should give an order to the service providers to release people's numbers so they will be able to make use of their telephone, because telephone is not only used for personal communication or social communication, It is also used for family and business. So you cannot underrate the value of telephone in our modern day society.
Thank you so much, Barrister Fred Nzako. I wish we could continue with the conversation, but because of our time, this is where we call it a wrap this morning. Thanks for joining us on the Newspaper Review, Barrister Fred.
Many thanks. Have a nice day.
You too, sir.